Hey y'all. Buenas noches, mi gente. How is everybody doing? I see several folks in the chat checking on the three kids. Said this is the first live chat they've made it to. Hello in Philly. Thank y'all for joining me tonight and my guest. We are going to be talking about real estate investing. I just wrapped up the last Get Started Investing Challenge of 2022. I know y'all often hear me talk about stock market investing, but as I say all the time, there are other ways to invest your money. So tonight we're going to be discussing one of those other ways. But before we jump into that, if you're new here, hello, welcome to the channel. Glad you found me. My name is Adelia Aborashade. Although most people know me as Picky Girl Travels the World, I am the founder of Picky Girls Travel Solo, which is a Facebook group for Black women and femme solo travelers with all levels of experience. So if solo travel is something that you have always wanted to do, but you didn't, nobody at home is supporting you with that, we are your people. If you're an experienced, an OG solo traveler, and you're looking for kindred spirits, that's us too. I am also the creator of the Financial Confidence Academy and the Get Started Investing Challenge. That is part of my work, my life's mission to help Black women master their money, develop financial confidence so they can be out here living their best life, whether that is traveling the world, whether that is living abroad, which I've been doing for the last 6 years, or that's opening, your organic tofu farm. I don't know, whatever it is. I'm here to help support you on your way to that goal. So, if any of those topics are of interest to you, why not subscribe to the channel? Turn on notifications. That way, you know the next time I go live with a guest or the next time I upload a new video. So, welcome. I'm glad to see you here tonight. So, for those of you who attended Exodus Summit earlier this month, my guest probably looks a little familiar to you. Charisma. Um, I I suck at introductions, including giving my own. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself to the audience, to the ones that might not know who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Charisma. I am a single mom and I travel, I would say 70% of the year with my son. My son has special needs and a disability, but we travel anyway. And I make that happen by investing in real estate. I invest in different types of real estate. So I kind of spread my money out there a little bit. And I still do a day job about a day, maybe two a week. I'm a nurse practitioner, so I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I have my YouTube channel, Charisma Cares Travels the World, where I talk about both just my life in general and traveling and doing so with a child and all of the ups and downs that go along with it. And then I also talk about my journey in real estate investing. And my YouTube is Charisma Cares Travels the World, and my website is Charisma Cares. I finally condensed and put everything on one. So all the classes, coaching, everything is finally there.
In one place. Awesome. Excuse me. Okay. So we there's a lot we could talk about that would be appropriate for this channel, but tonight our focus is real estate. And so my question is, I think my first question is pretty basic. Why did you go into real estate investing as opposed to some of the other options that are out there?
So honestly, I started looking at real estate investing very early on before I actually started investing. And it's gonna sound cliche, but I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. years and years ago. And, I looked into real estate and it was something that I always wanted to do. I remember my grandmother lived in Savannah, Georgia. And when she got older, they kind of took her house from under her, how they would do with the different mortgages. And, here later, that house, oh my goodness, that house would have been worth so much money. And I look at things like that, look at how the market has changed. So I've always wanted to invest, and then when I bought my first house, I actually bought it with the intention of renting it out and doing it again and again, like a rinse and repeat.
Okay. And so when did you buy your first house?
When the market tanked the first time, what was that,
So
2000?
08, 9, oh
Yeah,
08, 09, 2010,
yes.
somewhere around there.
So my first house, it was originally on the market for 260,000. The market tanked, the builder foreclosed, and I was waiting. I was just like, I'm not paying that much money. I waited and bought my house at $155,000. And that was my first first investment, a five bed, 3 bath house in
Okay.
Atlanta.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you said you bought this house with the intention of renting it more like, because this is what I used to be a landlord, which I hated with every fiber of my being. That this is one of the reasons y'all never hear me talk about real estate because it ain't for me.
Right.
Um, and so the plan was bought that house, actually paid it off, then moved into another house. And so I know a lot of people get rental properties that way, where the intention is to rent it when they've moved on to something else. Was that your intention, or were you intending to like house hack that original property that you bought?
So at the time, I didn't know anything about house hacking, bigger pockets. I didn't know any of that. I bought the house with the intention of just renting it out and moving on to the next house. However, I got married. The ex husband wasn't in agreement with my plan, and all of my plans were just too out there. I wanted to buy more property and do more things, and that wasn't realistic to the ex husband. So I actually stayed in that house a whole lot longer than I thought. I ended up staying there for like 9 or 10 years before I finally got rid of the baggage and started looking into what I really wanted to do again and rented out that house and bought another house.
Okay. Okay. And so you bought another house. You were living in that one, renting out the first one.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Because I was going to ask how you got started. Okay. So, um, is that what's in your portfolio now, two rental properties? Or do
So
you have more than that?
So what I did was when I bought the other house, held on it for 2 years. I bought it right before we went into COVID. So the previous house I had that rented out. The one I bought right before I went into COVID, and I was planning to buy yet another property, but with everything shutting down, things got difficult. At the time, I was meeting with realtors, and everything. Of course, the world flipped upside down. And I started right before that, I started doing some more real estate courses. And I met up with like this guru in Atlanta and started taking classes there. And then I ended up partnering with him and some other individuals in purchasing 2 properties in Alabama.
Okay. And at the time that you purchased these two properties in Alabama, you were living in Atlanta, Georgia.
Correct.
Okay. I wanted to make that distinction because I think a lot of people think that they are limited to investing in the market that they live in. And that is absolutely not true. There are lots of people who own investment properties in other states, other countries, you
Yeah.
know. Okay. Um, Now, you already told us you travel 70% of the time. So, how does this work?
So with my rental, before I left the States, I had already automated things. I had everything online. Mortgage was set up. My tenant would pay the mortgage. The mortgage would go directly to the bank. If there were work orders, they would go through there. If anything needed to be done, if it was small, I would go and look at it just because I was still learning and there were certain things I wanted to do. But outside of that, I would really just go online and find someone. I would call one of my connections. Water heater went out, called one of my connections, called somebody to change out the water heater, had him take a picture of the old one, the new one, and Zelled him the money. He emailed me the receipt. Same thing when I needed to replace some flooring, found him on a local group, read up some reviews on him. I had him go out, tell me what I needed, sent me some pictures of the flooring. I picked out the flooring. He went in, did the work. I sent him the money, send me the final project. And that's pretty much how that business goes for me.
Okay, that sounds scary as hell to me. I so how I mean, like, are you vetting these people? Like, how do you know you gonna get the work and the level, the quality of work that you want?
So what I do is I only use reference people. So what I tell people is go into a local Facebook group of yours where people own rental properties. I go into the group, I find what I need. If I need a plumber, I type in plumber. And basically, people will complain and they will give good things about every plumber they've used. They're going to give references, whether they're good or bad. I will then go and Google that company and look and see what they say about that company. I'll look up on Facebook, read their reviews, and then I will go on Better Business Bureau and look up and see if they have anything against them. Honestly, it's no different than when you find a person face to face. You don't know anything
That's true.
about that person.
That's true.
So I actually feel like I get more background that way, and you start to make connections. Since I already would go to the real estate investing meetings before everything got shut down, there were individuals that I could call and say, "Hey, do you know somebody that does this?" But
Okay.
honestly, a lot of the people that I went with were people that I found on Facebook, and after I find them and I research them, then maybe what I would do is I would go online and say, "Hey, has anyone used this company?" But most of the time, people, if someone's done something bad, people are going to tell the bad stuff before the good stuff. So you're
Okay.
going to know everything they did wrong, without even opening your mouth.
Okay. Okay. And you said that there would be some things that you would go handle yourself. So what kind of things did you typically handle
They
personally?
they were little things that I kind of felt like, okay, I can YouTube this because I'll YouTube anything. So I remember one time the tenant said the light switch wasn't working, and that didn't sound quite right to me. So I YouTube about the light switch. I went to Home Depot, got a light switch for $3, turned off the electrical box, came back and changed out the light switch.
Okay.
So it's something I could have hired out, but it was like that particular week I didn't have a lot to do. And, let me see what's going on here. Let me see if this is something that I could figure out. And then I have a handyman. So if I'm not available, or, if I wasn't available when I'm there, if I'm traveling, I have a handyman that I send out. Pay him a flat fee to just kind of go out and look at things.
Mm-hmm.
Most things your handyman can fix. There's not a whole lot, if you keep the property up and it's not really an older property, it's not really a lot that the handyman can't take care of. The other thing that I think makes a difference is I do a walkthrough every 6 months. So whether it's myself or the handyman, we go through every 6 months, walk through, identify any problems, and those problems have to be fixed within 30 days. I don't wait to the end. We're not taking it out your deposit. You need to you need to rectify these issues now, because even though you tell them, okay, you need to report these, they're not always reported. So if I have someone go out there every 6 months or so, then I can pick up those problems before they become major problems. So then when that tenant moves out, then I don't have as much stuff to fix.
Okay. And what kind of problems are we talking about that you have had to, that you caught in one of these walkthroughs?
So, well, I since I came to the States, I did a walkthrough while I was there, and the new flooring I put down, I guess she moved furniture and she scratched up all of the new flooring. This flooring was just put down in the last year. So I let her know, okay, here's the, information. Here's the type of flooring that it is, and then here is the person that put in the flooring, so you're going to need to take care of this and then send me the pictures and the receipt when you're done with that. And she knew what kind of flooring it was because I actually replaced some of the flooring, but she wanted a new living room. So she paid for the rest of the flooring herself. So she was very aware of what type of flooring it was. And she was aware that she was going to have to fix it. I had another issue. I'm not sure if this was the walkthrough, but she delayed reporting some water leakage, and it was upstairs. So I actually, in the bathrooms, I actually had two plumbers that went out, and come to find out the water leakage was because her daughter would leave the shower curtain outside of the tub. And basically the water had leaked and sat there, and it had ruined the ceiling. So, and her thing was, well, I went out of town, someone was sick, and I didn't get a chance to contact you. And I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. You didn't have your phone. You couldn't send me a text message. I said, okay, that's fine, but you are responsible for the repairs, because first it's because, the leakage is negligence basically, and you allowed the water to sit, so now we have to bring in fans, we have to have all of these different things done. And I actually found the plumber and the person to fix the ceiling and all of that. I think I found them on Angie's list actually. So
And I guess I'm sitting here a little in disbelief, a little surprised. Like, you tell these people this is what you need to fix, and they fix it?
mhm, yep.
Huh.
But I
Huh.
did a lot of vetting on the beginning. Like, and I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is when they pick out their tenant. Like, I'm doing a course, it starts in November, the first Sunday in November, on finding and vetting your tenant. Like, I feel like that is the biggest part of it. Like, making sure you get the right tenant in there, even if you have to wait a little bit. This particular tenant, there, it was a newly married couple. The husband actually had an eviction. The wife knew nothing of this eviction, and I told him, I'm not going to be able to rent to you because you have an eviction. They actually went to the state that they were from to get a letter from the court to say that this eviction was due to the roommate that he had. It was due to the roommate, and he was able to get a letter saying this. Any tenant that goes that far to get a property and then everything else checks out, more than likely is going to take care of your property. Now, another thing that I do is I go visit their house. I either visit their house or I do a virtual walkthrough. So I'm doing some extra steps. A lot of what I do in all of my real estate is extra steps on the front end, because I feel like that makes my life so much easier on the back end. And we do a full sit down before you sign that lease on your responsibilities in this house. And if you don't want those responsibilities, you don't need to sign this lease. So you already know you're not
I
calling me.
I have never had a renter who would have done any of that. I mean, it was a struggle to get my damn rent. So, let alone go through all of those hoops. So, I
Nope.
you are obviously doing something right, and I was obviously doing lots of things wrong.
Yep,
Uh,
never. They were never late, even with COVID. Never missed a payment. Never a day late. I mean, when the stuff happened with the ceiling, I gave her extra time since it was Christmas, but I let her know after a certain time there was a late fee on that. So I paid it up front and let her pay that on the back end. But no, but I laid everything out in the beginning. There were no surprises.
okay, all right. We had a question. If Doctor wanted to know, have you purchased property to build? and rent a house for passive income?
I don't do build ups. I do
Okay.
not. I don't do fix and flips either. That requires too much time and energy from me. I'm just I'm more of a laid back type of person. So my things are buying a property and maybe fixing it up enough to rent it out. I'm in the process of that. I invest in syndications. I do partnerships, but I don't do fix and flips. That's a headache. And if you have anxiety, it may not be something you want to do.
Oh, well, I've never done that, but I've built a house before and I will never do that ever again. I think building is great if you have endless amounts of money and maybe endless amounts of time. And I know with flipping, time is money, time is of the essence. And so everything needs to work together like a well-oiled machine. And when it doesn't, uh, that's that's an issue. Okay. Um,
The
le-
Virgo and type A and me can't deal with that. It is
okay.
not a well oiled machine.
What about pest control, lawn maintenance, etc.? Do you furnish your rentals?
Pest control and lawn maintenance is on the tenant. I do require them to change their air filters in the house every 3 to 6 months. That is a requirement under their lease. And the rest of it, all of those are requirements in their lease. They have to take care of the property. As far as furnished rentals, the only time I've done that is when I've done short-term Airbnb. Like my personal house, I Airbnb that out when I started traveling because I was waiting those 2 years for the capital gains tax. And then one of the properties in Alabama, we Airbnb'd out the unit, so that was a furnished unit.
Okay. And do you currently have any like Airbnbs or short-term rentals?
I don't. I'm not a huge fan of them, but these Mexico rental prices, I may have some before I leave. I already set up with the realtor to meet next week. So yeah, I'm loving the cash on cash return out here.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. In the US where your portfolio is primarily located, you've not been in love with short-term rentals. Why?
No, I don't like people bothering me. So I mean, I'm very simple. That's why I automate stuff anyway. So when you have the short-term rentals, especially when they first come in, they have a lot of questions, they have a lot of concerns. It's a lot of things that they need. You can automate that. You can do something like Guesty and get that automated. But when I first started that, I don't know that Guesty and those things were out. And if they were, I didn't know about them. So I invested in an apartment building in Alabama, and we were doing an Airbnb in one of those units out. Well, you can't use those for rentals, like your Guesty and those automated systems. They have to be homes that you own. So we weren't
Okay.
able to use that. But the turnover, and then it may have been the area that it was in. It was kind of hood there, so people would steal stuff like all of the toilet paper and paper towels. They would like they would break the bed, break the couch. It was the craziest thing I had ever experienced. When I Airbnb'd out my house, the lady broke the washing machine. I don't know what she put in it, and it just was a lot. Now Airbnb pays for it, but I was like, this is too much for me. Like, we're just doing way too much. And I don't know if it's because it was in the States or if that's just the way it is. But here in Mexico, you basically have a whole team that does everything for you. And as long as they're doing everything and, I'm just supplying what I need to, I'm okay with that. So I'm going to look into it
Well,
and see.
one could argue you could set up a team like that in the US.
It's true, but by that time I was done. I was out of
Oh.
there. I was like, the birds. Like, I just don't have time for this foolishness. So what I did instead, I just started investing in more syndications. And that was a lot easier for me. Let somebody else do the work.
Okay. And Abba is interested in syndications, and I'm sure there are other folks watching who would like to know more about those. So let's start very basic. What is a syndication?
A syndication is when two or more investors or companies come together and they purchase a property. However, these are commercial properties. So it could be apartment buildings, hotels, nursing homes, land, commercial buildings, even though right now I went commercial buildings are becoming a bit of a dinosaur. um, the office buildings are, but they're, those $1 million plus properties. And it may be like 20 units, it could be 300 units. So basically, you take your money and you invest, and you kind of like you get a share. It's like when you're buying a stock, you get a share of that property. The good thing about syndications is a lot of times you're doubling or getting 2.5 times your money in a set amount of time. If you do something that's high risk, like investing in land deals or build ups where they're building a subdivision, you can double your money in a year or two if you're okay with the risk, because more money
Okay.
is
Well,
more
more
risk.
risk, yeah. Like
Right,
if there's a high potential to make lots of money, y'all need to realize that means there's a large risk and you could lose lots of money as well.
right.
Okay. So with what you've said so far, a syndication sounds a lot like a REIT, a real estate investment trust.
Mhm.
Um, are they the same thing? Are they different? How are they different?
So they're similar, but the way that they're different is with the syndication, you have a syndication and you have a syndication fund. And the way I explain it is with a syndication, you're investing in the building, so they're going to present to you everything about this building. They're going to tell you what's going on with the building currently, what they're going to improve upon this building, how they'll raise rents, things that they'll change. All of those, they'll go into all of those things. They'll go over the numbers. How do they plan to get you from point A to point B? That's what, and you're investing in that building. Excuse me. When you have a syndication fund, you're investing in the people that's over those buildings. So
Okay.
basically, you are entrusting your money to the team that they will put it in the right developments.
Okay.
Whereas the syndication, you're investing in the
Investing in the
building, even
in the
though you want
development
to,
itself.
right, even though you
Okay.
want to vet the teams to know that they know what they're doing. But that's the difference. The reps are a little different, you're not really investing in the particular properties.
Okay. Okay. And if okay, I don't trust nobody.
Then
Okay.
you shouldn't do syndications.
Because that's I'm like, somebody come tell me, hey, I'm putting together a deal to buy this mall. And if I'm gonna come off my money, you need, like, how do I know these people are legit? How do I know they're not gonna take my money and run? So yeah, syndications do not sound like the thing for me. And I know that about myself because I distrust this whole thing.
You're like anti real estate
I'm
anyway.
not anti real estate, but I realize this about me as a
Right.
person that I don't there are people, and I see this when people are investing in stocks. There are people who they're like, hey, this person is hot. I'm just going to give them my money. And I don't have that kind of trust in humanity. I need to know more about you. I need to know about more about what we're doing. So I somebody's telling me they're going to go purchase this building. I'm 100% convinced until somebody shows me otherwise that they're just going to take my money and run off somewhere. So, um, is there a way to vet or to be able to tell like that a syndication is legit versus not?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that you want to take a look at. First of all, syndications fall under two different branches. There's accredited and then there's non-accredited. Accredited, have to make 200,000 a year or more, and you have to have about 1 million in assets minus your home. Non-accredited don't have all of those rules. You have to be considered a sophisticated investor. In other words, when I present this to you, you need to understand what I'm presenting to you, because you've taken the role of someone that says, I do know what's going on. So the non-accredited are not advertised. It's one of those things where you have to know someone that basically knows someone. So that's
Okay.
kind of how you get your foot in the door to even know about it. So when someone brings you to syndication, because this is somebody that you typically know one way or another, they're kind of bringing you something that they're aware of, that they've heard through some other individuals. When you're looking at the syndication, you need to be able to first know how to vet the sponsors. Basically the team that's put this together, done the due diligence. You need to know that they have the experience, they have the know-how, they have the person with the money that's signing for the loan. They have all their ducks in a row, because you don't want to just invest in Joe Blow that decided
No.
one day, he woke up and was like, I'm gonna buy this building. You want to give me some money? Like, and people do that. Like,
Yeah,
that's
and
not
I know
called
people who do that, and then when their money disappears, they're looking crazy. Like, how did this
right.
happen?
Right. So you don't want to put your money into that. Like, you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. They've done their due diligence on the property, and they've put together this lovely performa. They've got these wonderful spreadsheets that half of it you don't know what it is. They're bringing all of this to you in a nice, pretty bow. However, you need to be able to pick that apart. You need to know about the sponsors. You need to do your research on them. You need to look at their background. You need to know the questions to ask before you even get to the numbers and what you're doing with my money. I need to make sure that I can trust you, that you know what you're doing with your money, if you're even investing. Because that's one of the questions. Are you putting your money in here, or are you just raising money? Because nothing about the syndication says you have to invest in this. So
Okay.
I need to specifically ask you, where's your money? Like, how much are you putting into this? Then
Okay.
after you get past that part, you need to start going through the numbers. You need to know, well, actually, even before that, you need to evaluate the area yourself. If they said, well, we're going to go in here and we're going to remodel, and we see that the rents in this area are 1,500 and this property is 1,000, you need to know what's going on in that area about the population. You need to know the growth, what companies are in that area. You should be investing in a property that's in Timbuktu and don't have anything around it, because guess what? The same way you won't move to Timbuktu, nobody else is either. So you have to
Okay.
evaluate that portion of it. Then after we get past these two things, right? Because if we don't get past these two, then we're not even talking about money, because I'm done. And so once we get past these two things, then that's when we evaluate the numbers. You have to have a specific criteria, and you know that if it doesn't fall within your criteria, it's like 5 categories. If it doesn't fall within that criteria, then you need to walk away. You should not be married to anything that is presented to you. And you have time to do your due diligence. These are apartment buildings. They're not closing in 30 days
Okay.
like a house is.
Okay. No, and I think that's important to mention that the speed of this kind of deal, like, it should not be like, okay, this has to happen in the next 6 days. Like, that should be, I would
Right.
imagine that's a red flag.
Yeah, and I have one syndicator. She'll do that, and the thing may be they had this syndication out here for months, and they're about to close in 6 days. However, that is not my problem. Like, and I know this is a wonderful deal, and this is the deal of a lifetime, but I'm pretty sure that in the next 3 months you're going to present to me another wonderful deal and the deal of a lifetime. So if I don't have time to properly evaluate that deal, then I'm not even looking at that deal. I'm just not interested. And once you
Okay.
kind of get into that bubble, people are, I mean, at this point, I constantly get emails about new syndications and different things that's that's going on and all of these different things that they're doing. And, I don't do all syndications. Like, my focus right now is another rental, and then I do partnerships. So I spread, my money out. I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. But the other thing with syndications that a lot of, the rich and the wealthy do is like those 401ks, those IRAs, they use those funds to invest in syndications because it makes you money faster than in the stocks, the bonds, and mutual funds. So you can do a 5-year hold, which is about typical, is a, 4 to 6 year hold. So
Because that
around
was
5 years.
gonna be my other question. That like, what is the length of this kind of investment? Is this a short term investment? Is this a longer term kind of investment?
So I do a little bit longer term. Like I said, if you do land or build ups or things of that nature, they'll flip your money in about a year or two. With those particular things, though, you basically invest your money and you typically don't get your money back until the end of the deal, because they actually have to sell what they have to make money. Whereas if you're doing something like storage units or you're doing apartments, you invest your money. You may wait about 6 months, 3 to 6 months, but then you'll start to receive dividends, typically quarterly. And then you'll get a lump sum at the end when they sell or refinance. So for the most part, those are going to be about 5 years, but there are some that go 10 years. I don't do 10 years because that just sounds like a long time to me. But if if this is your 401k and you have decades before retirement, that may not be bad if those numbers make sense. Like if you're telling me I'll double my money in 10 years, you're not getting my money. Like I need you to do more with my money in 10 years. But you telling me you'll double my money in 4 or 5 years, depending on the amount of money, that's pretty good, because there's not a lot of things where you can double $50,000 and get over 100 grand in 5 years,
Okay.
and you're not
Or
doing anything.
there is always the possibility you could lose that money, right? Or
It
some
is.
portion of it,
It
because
is.
nothing is guaranteed.
Right. It's just like any investment. Like you can't guarantee anything. You just have to mitigate your loss. You have to mitigate the
Okay.
risk. And that's why you have to do the research. You can always have somebody that just is a criminal and runs away with the money.
Or there's a global pandemic, or, who
Even
knows?
the pandemic, I can't say you would lose your money. And the reason why, unless you invested in a commercial building, which now nobody uses, but I don't know that you would lose your money if you invested in the right syndication. Because if you have a syndicator that knows how to mitigate those risks, what they would have done was they would have set up their mortgage so that they had some leeway there. So people are still paying. Like say you're doing a building and it's the middle of the pandemic, people are still paying rent. If they're not paying rent, the government came and gave these subsidies. So what will happen is, in the middle of the pandemic, if your 5 years hit, then are you going to sell that property? No. But what you can do is continue to hold it for a year or two until all of this dies down. So you're not necessarily losing, it's a longer hold time because people are still living there. Now if you're looking at something like the commercial buildings, that went a little bit different. If you're looking at, things that we would have never really expected, that, people wouldn't be going to stores and shopping. But of course, the government came and gave bailouts for those different types of things. So something like that, I wouldn't think that I would lose my money. I would feel like we probably have to hold longer. It's probably, instead of being a
Okay.
5 year hold, it's going to be a 7 year hold. And even with one of the syndications I recently invested in, it's a 5 year hold. However, the mortgage that they got a mortgage that will allow them to go to 10 years, just in case the market drops so badly or if something happens where we can't sell on year 5. They've put those things in the background as a safeguard. And that's kind of part of researching that syndicator and knowing that they've done this before and they have the experience and they actually know how to mitigate these risks and make sure you get your return or even more.
Okay. All right. So let's say somebody who's not me, has heard all of this and thinks, huh, this is really interesting. I would like to get into this. How does someone just starting out find a syndication or find a syndicator?
So it's one of those things where you have to know somebody. The easiest way to find people is to go into a meetup group.
Okay, so like network with other people who are doing real estate investing and make it known that this is something you're interested to into, and then somebody who knows somebody or somebody who's putting one together,
Yeah.
mentions your name, brings it to you, something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you look on like look at multi-families or syndications. You can start going to go to meetup.com. There'll be some meetups there, and you start meeting people. There's a lot of networking groups in this arena because they know the SEC has specific guidelines. So you have to have some kind of connection. Therefore, there's a lot of networking groups here. There are a lot of conferences. You can go to a conference, you can attend an online conference, but it's really getting to know people. And in this world, the social media is a little different. LinkedIn is where we're all at. Everybody's in LinkedIn. When you go to meetings, they're going to ask you your LinkedIn. They don't care about your Facebook. They don't care about your Instagram. Everything in this world is LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. All right. We had a question. Have you had to ever evict anybody?
Mm-mm.
I have more than once.
No, I screen pretty well. Now, one of my properties in Alabama, my partner, he's done the eviction, but he screened for that tenant. I did not screen for that
Well,
tenant,
I
and his
will I will
screen was bad.
I will tell you, as somebody who has done it, the burden of proof is on everything is on you. And it's really about how determined is this person to stay in your house. If they are bound and determined not to leave, and it's really going to be because, like, the threat of eviction, like, you can't just, depending on your state, you just can't be like, okay, you're evicted. No, you've got to give them notice. You've got to give them so many days notice. You've got to go to court and actually present the thing to get the ruling in your for you. Then you let them know, hey, the court sided with me, and then hopefully they leave. And if they don't, then the sheriff has to come out. And it's not an instant process. It's not fun, and it's not cheap either.
And you may not get your money back.
No, you may not,
Money
because
back.
it may just be your goal is to get them out of your house. Getting them
Mhm.
out of your house and getting your money, those are two
Yep.
separate things. So yeah.
One option, you ever done keys for cash, cash for keys?
No, I don't know what
So
that is.
okay, so to avoid a lot of evictions, basically, landlords will pay the tenant to leave.
Hmm.
So depending on the pricing of your house, some people they'll say, "Well, I'll give you $500 if you leave the property in the next week. Just make sure it's broom clean. So make sure you've cleaned it out. I'll give you this money." They use that money to go somewhere else. Sometimes they'll give $1,000 or more, and a lot of it is swallowing your pride because you're like, "Why
Yeah,
I gotta pay
because
you?"
no, but that's not a horrible idea, because the time is money, the amount of money it's going to cost you to go to court, the
Exactly.
amount of time you're going to be waiting to get them out of your house. That is not a
Exactly.
horrible idea.
So that's what a lot of people do to avoid evictions. And that's actually what we ended up doing with one of our tenants. So basically, you pay them to leave, and they leave the house clean, and you get it ready for the next tenant. They don't have to worry about an eviction on their background, and you don't have to worry about going through that headache of evicting somebody. So that's one of those things that you kind of keep in the back of your mind. I mean, honestly, if you're a landlord long enough, eventually you probably will have somebody you need to get rid of. You want to make sure you know the tenant landlord laws in your area. And Georgia is a Republican state, so we don't have we get people out in 30 days. We do not have problems getting people evicted. New York, yeah, that's a
It's
whole
gonna be a
different beast.
different thing.
That
Yeah.
it takes months to get somebody evicted in New York. California, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't do anything in the state. They have so many rules, laws, and regulations. I just personally wouldn't do it. But you need to know those laws in your state. And yeah, I would definitely give cash for keys over an eviction.
Okay.
Go ahead, take it's
Learned
cheaper.
something new already. Stephanie wants to know, what conferences do you go to?
I like the GOB network. That
As,
is probably my favorite.
as in the letters GOB?
Yes.
Okay.
So the GOB network, it's a closed network. Once you know somebody, you can get in, you put their information in, but you can attend online meetings. They have in-person meetings all over the state, all over the country. They do a conference once a year. And I like the GOB network because they don't mind teaching beginners. So if you're new, they actually encourage you to come in and ask questions. So I really like that about that particular network. There is another conference coming up soon. I don't have the name of it right now. If you're on my mailing list, I try to send out some of this information. So if you go to my website, you can subscribe to the mailing list, and I send out some of the information on the conferences. There's one coming up next month. It's a free conference. And that's kind of how you start to network and you start to learn. This particular conference is online as well. Everything is either online or hybrid. It's not a whole lot of things anymore that you have to be in person. So I have my meetings. I do about 3 meetings a week. Where I'm meeting with different investors, because they're typically in these groups. Yes, you have syndicators and people that are, investing, but you also have the legal people there. You have the loan people. You have brokers. You have people that have small multifamily, single family homes. You have a large array of people to talk to and to kind of bounce ideas on and get to know. So, it's like, it's one of those things, when you work in a field, you see the same people all the time, no matter what, eventually it's one of those things. And as people get to know you, they become more familiar with you. So it's a lot of networking and learning. The thing that I will say though is, even though they teach you a lot, it's a lot that you need to learn from the back end to even understand what they're trying to teach you. Because you're looking at those spreadsheets and you like, what are you talking about? Like, I literally, my first meeting, I would just sit there with a pen and paper and just write down like acronyms, words, and I literally had to go and look each one up.
So what you're saying is there's going to be a learning curve here. This is not something you just show up and you like, boom, here's my money, let's go. You need to.
Good, but
Okay. Okay. All right.
yeah, you wanna at least learn the basics, so that you know what's going on, so you know what's important to you. Because some of these meetings, there's different type of meetings for everything, but there's meetings where they just come in, and every time they come in, different people bring deals. They bring
Okay.
deals to the table, and people start throwing all kinds of questions at them, and even they question some of their numbers. Wait, hold on, let me check on it. Okay, let me write that down. I'm gonna have to bring. Okay, I'm gonna bring that back to the meeting. So, it's you're constantly learning. I personally always like a good challenge. But it's one of those things. It doesn't take a long time to learn it, but it's not like when you're just investing. Like if you're doing an Airbnb, it's kind of simple to just get a place and Airbnb it and kind of roll with the punches. With this,
Okay.
you're putting your money in. You sign this legal documentation that they're keeping your money, and this is the returns that you're expecting. So you want to make sure you know what's going on and you're comfortable with the deal. After they present it, you can schedule a phone phone call. I need to talk to you because I have a list of questions. Anybody that says they don't have time to do that, you don't need to give them your money.
Okay. All right. That's good advice. And so, Din, Dinanita, Dinanita, I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name. So, if I'm looking to kind of learn some of that background, some of those basics, I'm a newbie. Do
Mhm.
you have any suggestions on where I could do that?
So I actually couldn't find a lot on how to invest in syndications. I have one or two books that I found on Amazon. So I actually created a course, because even when I would Google things, I would get bits and pieces. Like I would get something that tells me how to calculate the numbers, but now not how to vet the actual syndicators. It would tell me little bits. Like I'm looking at cash on cash return. I can go and Google cash on cash return, but I don't know how to compare that versus like an IRR or, return on investment. So that was the problem that I had. So I did create a course, and that's actually on my website as well, charisma-cares.com. It's a self-paced course. There is one book that I felt like was pretty good. It does get very detailed. It gives you what you want and some of what you don't want. The name of that book is, give me a minute and I'll think about the name of the book.
Okay, okay, okay. Um, we had another question. Um, could you talk? Did you remember it?
I'm looking
Not
it up
yet.
right
Okay.
now.
All right. So while you're looking that up, there are links in the description to the courses that Charisma has created. Um, can you talk about how you went about financing your properties?
Okay. First, The Hands Off Investor by Brian Burke.
Okay. The hands off.
Investor by Brian Burke. There's one other,
Brian with a I or Brian with a Y?
I,
By Brian who?
Burke, Burke.
Okay. There we go. I just typed that into the chat, or I thought I did. Did I? Yeah, I did. There it is. Hands Off Investor by Brian Burke.
Hmm.
Okay.
And then what was the other question?
The question was about how you finance the properties that you have purchased.
I'm a saver. First of all, I'm that person that is considered frugal, I guess. I save for a rainy day, a thunderstorm, a monsoon. I say I save for it all, and part of that is I've always been a saver, but I have a child with special needs, so there would be periods of time where I couldn't work. So I always had to make sure I had money saved. So, and you just kind of have to have that backup. So I always had the money saved. Also, when they were giving away that free money during COVID, I invested mine. I didn't spend mine at the store. Um, so I took mine and I invested in a syndication. So I took those funds and I used that. You can also use your 401k. You can use your IRA. You can either even come together and, let's say you find an investment and it's $25,000, and you and four of your other family members decide you want to invest in it together. You all can pool that money, and you can either pool it and you just have one person that manages that, or you all can create an LLC if you want to go the technical route, and you can invest in a property. So there are different ways to do it. What I will say is don't take your last and invest in a syndication. And the reason why I say this is a long hold. This is not monthly mailbox money. Syndications for me, I look at as my longer term investments, and then my rental properties are my shorter term. So I get money monthly for my rental, and then my syndications that comes in quarterly or annually.
Okay.
So you kind of, I don't want you to say, oh, well, these are my last $5,000, let's invest it. I personally wouldn't do that. And I also I wouldn't borrow money to invest in a syndication. So I wouldn't take out a loan. That's just me personally. I wouldn't take out a loan because more than likely the percentage that you have to pay on those loan payments over time is going to cause you some issues, because don't forget, this is quarterly or annually.
Yeah. Yeah. But your two rentals, were those regular mortgages?
Mhm. Those were regular mortgages. And for a rental, I'll borrow on that because that's good debt. I'm borrowing for, that mortgage. I'm putting down a down payment, and I'm making sure I make a certain return monthly. I mean, in Atlanta, oh my goodness, if you had a house before COVID, you're easily making $800+ a month on one property.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and if you buy right and you build it up, you can definitely make some good money there.
Okay. We had another question about how much money should you have to get into these groups or begin investing in real estate?
So you don't need any money to actually get into the groups. For the syndications, there's a minimum. So whether that minimum is $5,000 or $50,000, there are minimum amounts to invest in them. You
Okay.
know, as far as getting into real estate in general, I mean, honestly, you can house hack, get an FHA and put down 3%. At this point, I mean, places like NACA and Georgia, we have the Georgia Dream program, these down payment assistance programs, they're coming back because guess what? Nobody's buying houses anymore. Now,
Yeah.
during COVID, you couldn't get these. Nobody was waiting on your FHA loan. They wanted you to close, and they wanted you to close quick. But right now, prices are dropping because interest rates are going up. So these programs are becoming popular again. So if you qualify for FHA and you can do your homework to get into some of these down payment assistance programs, go and get you a duplex or a quad. You don't have to start with a syndication if that's not where you are with your funding.
Okay. Now, uh, I am curious because I've always seen crowdfunding as a way for folks, like some of the crowdfunding sites, you can start investing with like $10, $25. I know that you are not a fan of this, so I would like to know more about that. Why you aren't a fan of crowdfunding?
So for crowdfunding, it's kind of why you're not a fan of syndications, right? Because you don't
Okay.
trust them. So with crowdfunding, you are investing in their online site. There's no person that you can talk to. There's nobody that's really connected to it. There are specific sites that's made, and that's crowdfunding. Well, what they found is when that site goes out of business, nobody knows where your money goes.
Okay.
So you've invested in a site. This site is doing everything. Like there was one in Atlanta called Buy the Block. Very popular one. He had stuff you can invest in $50, $100, $500. He's doing fairly well. He's still around. So if you invested in that, you may have done well. I think he does tiny homes and all kinds of things. However, I think his name is Chris Signal, something like that. However, there's some of these crowdfunders that you invested in this site, and this site went away. And now you're
Okay.
calling the SEC and all of these different companies, and they're like, wait, this is new. So we actually don't know. So crowdfunding is like fairly new. So it's starting to kind of sizzle out because they're still trying to figure that out. Like I can't tell you if that site dies down where your money goes. If I'm
Okay.
investing in some individuals and it's a team of them, at least we got someone to trace, right? So we have a
Okay.
whole team, at least we have four individuals that we could go after. With that site, it's a portal. So I don't know who you go after for a portal. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Um, all right. So another question we had. Um, um,
Oh, and oh, this actually may go into what I'm going to say. Go ahead.
Okay. Pros and cons of property management company. Would that help to reduce the workload?
It's supposed to.
One would think if you're paying these people to manage your property, it should.
However, I think just like everything else, you need to vet the individuals. It is not enough to just Google property management and decide I'm going to work with this particular property management company. I personally recommend vetting your own tenants, even if you do a property management company, because no company is going to do that extra research that I mentioned. They're not going to do all of that. And I feel like that's what makes or breaks you in real estate. Because if you get a bad tenant, you don't want to do this no more. I had a friend, right. She had a tenant from hell. That woman had issues every other week, didn't pay rent for months. This was before COVID. So COVID wasn't even an option. She ended up leasing her house out to the tenant leased it out to someone else that destroys stuff. Like if you get a tenant from hell, you're done. You're like, I'm not doing real estate at all. So I think that is even if you decide to do property management, I feel like it's important that you vet and find your own tenant. Like I said, I have a class that's coming up where I'm teaching that. It's like an hour and a half. It's nothing long, but just going through those different motions. If you decide to do property management, since I automate, I don't because I really don't need to. My tenants don't call me. Uh, they may text me once in a blue moon, but not my tenants aren't bothering me. So now if I decided to scale up and do a lot of rentals, then I may do that. But you need to vet that property management company as well. You need to ask them how they operate business. If something happens in the middle of the night, are they, going to automatically send out this plumber or electrician that's $200 an hour? Or are they going to actually ask the tenant questions to see if they can manage what's going on and maybe send out a handyman? So, regardless, you just can't, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can't just throw people out there and say, okay, sink or swim. You still need to do your research. Google is a wonderful thing. You can do a Google search. You can go in those same Facebook groups that I mentioned, find property managers. They will talk trash about them or they will talk them up. And, they'll let them know. These bigger companies that do property management, I've always heard some of the worst things about them, you know.
What I hear you saying is a property manager can take care of those, like the toilet is backed up kind of things, but they're not going to be as picky about who rents the property as you would personally. And so, from your experience, being pickier about the renter saves you lots of trouble on the back end. So, still do that piece yourself,
Yeah, a
probably.
lot of what I do is a lot of work on the front end because then it makes everything else in my life easier. If I do go that extra mile to find and vet that tenant, and then I hand that over to a property manager and they keep it up, we're doing pretty good as long as you keep those rules in place. But you have to remember a property manager gets paid a percentage of the rent. But anything that goes wrong in there, you pay that outright. So that's why you want to make sure you're vetting your property manager that, they like this. You don't want a property manager that's like, this not my money. Go ahead, pay $500 because they got a toy stuck in the toilet. Like, no, we're not, we're definitely not doing that. A lot of these things can be handled with a handyman. So let's get the handyman that's going to charge me $25 an hour and not send out the plumber that's going to charge me $200 an hour.
Okay.
But you need to make sure a good property manager will do that. One that doesn't care, they just don't care because it's not their money.
Okay. Okay. Is there a formula or what formula do you use when determining how much to charge for rent?
So there is no one formula. So you first need to find out the comps in the area. So you need to do it's a comparative analysis that you do to find out what a similar property as yours is charging for the area. So if you have a 4 bedroom, 3 bath, you can look and see how much other people are charging for a 4 bed, 3 bath ranch in the area. That will give you an idea, but you also need to, and that's going to give you an idea of your market value. However, you do need to look at your house in general. Like, how does your house rate compare to these other homes in the area? Um, there is a website. They'll let you run analysis for maybe 2 or 3 times before they charge you. Rentometer.com. So it's spelled rent.
Say that again.
So it's spelled rentometer.com.
Okay.
So they'll tell you what rents are in that area. That's the quickest way to do it. But after you do it 2 or 3 times, they're not telling you no more. But you can go on like Zillow, or you can go on Trulia, or just one of those websites, and you can actually look at the rents in your neighborhood. You can pinpoint it all the way down to the street, and you actually want to look at the rents on your street for similar properties to compare it. So it's not a formula per se. It's really just doing the research, or you can call a property manager. They'll tell you. Now they're going to probably say, I need to come out and look at your place and give you an estimate and da 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 first. But they'll tell you what they feel like your place can rent for, because Rentometer gives you a range, and it may be a $300 range, a $500 range. And that's really comparing your property to other properties in the area.
Okay. Um, I don't know if you can speak to this, or maybe now that you have interest in the short-term rental market here in Mexico, maybe you could talk about things that you're thinking about. Pros and cons of owning real estate in one country as opposed to multiple countries.
So I actually have a video on my channel that you can look up, where I actually interviewed a realtor when I was staying in Dominican Republic. She actually was based in Atlanta, but she would take you to Dominican Republic and show you properties. And some of the things that she said about purchasing properties. First of all, when you purchase out of the country, there's no loans. Loans leave when you leave the states. So keep that in mind. There are no mortgages. They actually pay for their properties outright. So you need to have some money. When you purchase properties out of the country, you want to try to get them in the building stage, because they're going to be significantly cheaper if you get them while they're still building. And a lot of times, when you're looking at those properties, you're doing more like short-term rentals. You don't want to do just rentals, because the locals typically can't afford what you're buying, because you're buying these condos and these more what they would consider high price properties, and you're looking at short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, things of that nature. And you'll make some good money off of it, because you're buying low. You can get a 2 bedroom condo in the DR for under $100,000. Is $100,000 a lot to come up with at one time? Yeah. Is $100,000 a lot for a 2 bedroom condo? Have you all looked at the prices in these metro cities? And this is in Punta Cana. So you could get 4 people. If 4 of you all have $25,000, you go in and you buy this property. You do want to be careful buying overseas, though, because their realtors are not typically vetted like ours. Ours has to go through training and classes and all of these different things. So you have to make sure you get a good realtor. That's the only one. The one I interviewed is the only one I know in Dominican Republic and Punta Cana. And then through some people I've met here, I'm meeting realtors here. So you have to make, you as an American don't want to walk up there and try to buy this property, right? Because first of all, they're going to rip you off, and you're going to pay way more than anybody else. And then if it's a house, you don't know if you own that land. Then certain places, Americans can't own the land. Some places you only own it for 99 years, or when you die, your land goes with you. So there's a lot of different angles there. For me, when I'm looking at doing something in Mexico, I'm actually not looking at buying. I'm looking at renting, signing a year lease, and then basically what you're doing is subletting. So that's another option so you don't tie yourself into it. Now, if I find a place where I want to stay, I buy there and then lease it out while I'm gone, and do short-term rentals, things of that nature, and then stay there when I come back. But those are all things that you want to keep in mind, because you can be, I mean, just like everything else, you can be ripped off if they think you a sucker, they're gonna take you. Like, I mean, it's really simple.
I would also add, you are correct in that buying outside the US during construction, you're going to get it significantly cheaper than when construction is finished, but there is risk associated with
Of
that.
course.
Because if the developer runs on hard times, if they're not properly financed, and they can't complete the project, you might not get your money back. So, like,
Yeah, it's not, you can't sue everybody once you leave the state.
no,
So
no.
you again do, I mean, all of this is due diligence. You really have to do your due diligence. That was one reason I didn't buy anything in the DR, that, and I frankly didn't like it there. Uh, but if I had, I would have only went through that realtor. That realtor lived in Atlanta. She's been doing this for years. You know, her model was pretty much proven. You know, she knew which properties to go after. She's seen these properties from beginning to end. But you want to make sure you have an individual like that on your team, because it can make or break you. I mean, I've seen stories where people, they bought this house on this land, and that land wasn't deeded to that person that they sent that money to, and that money is gone. There is no legal system once you leave the states. That, yeah, you need to know what you're doing.
If anybody watching this has particular interest in buying property in in Mexico, I've interviewed two women who have bought just plain land, bought pro, construction to rent, and done the whole thing. So if there are two videos on my channel, if you're interested specifically in Mexico.
Well, I need to
Um,
watch those.
okay. Um, okay. F Doctor also wanted to know, are your tenants required to have renter's insurance?
They are required to have renter's insurance. They're required to have a certain amount of coverage. That is a condition of their lease, and they can be their lease can be terminated if they don't have it. And they are required to list me. So when they renew, I get it. If they don't renew, I get it too. What?
Okay. You have found people who are far more compliant than I ever dealt with, which just goes to show you I am not built for this. This is not for me.
But
And that's fine. That's fine.
when we
That's
have that conversation before you sign that lease, I let you know, and you signed on that dotted line, that these are the requirements. We do a whole animal, even with animals. I have requirements for animal. If that's your whatever animal, make sure he can be on your insurance. If he can't be on your insurance, you have to have insurance, so you can't stay here. That has nothing to do with me. That's your insurance. That's between the two of you all. You know, if this is your safety or whatever animal, have your veterinarian send me a letter. Like, that's fine with me, as long as you have the documentation. And guess what? If you're lying, you are not going through those changes. You're not doing it.
If Doctor made this comment when you were talking about like vetting the syndication and all that. Y'all know I am not trying to work. This is work. So just another reason that this is not the right route for me. Now, I there are some of y'all that this is the way for you to go, not for this girl right here. Um, Go ahead.
So it's work on the front end. However, I've had the same tenant for almost going over 3 years. I don't do nothing after that.
And that's great, but no, I want
Right,
people to hear this because too many times uh real renting property, being a landlord gets conflated with passive income,
right.
and it is not. because of the work that you are putting in on the front end. Now, if you do enough heavy lifting on the front end,
You
at
don't have
some point you're not constantly working. But I think people get this idea that, oh, I just get a property and I rent it and bam, people just pay me money every month. Uh, they don't always pay. Like,
Yeah, if you do it the right way, that's what it can end up being. But you have to be able to do that work, do it up front. Now you can get a property management company to do all of these things, and then if they need to be evicted, the property management company will do
yes.
that too. So you can definitely do that. I'm more a little bit more of a hands-on person. I just like to know what's going on. And I mean, knock on wood, I just really haven't had a lot of issues. And I think because if I'm gonna do all of that on the front end, they don't want to be bothered with me. They said, well, if she gonna require all of this up front, I don't want to
No,
be bothered with
they will self-select and
her.
remove
Right,
themselves from the pool,
right.
which is great. But there is still
Hmm.
work being done, and I don't want that part to be lost.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about your syndication course? What that covers?
So the syndication course, like I said, is self-paced and it has four different sections. It's first going to give you the ins and outs of what a syndication is. It goes over the funds, the crowdfunding. It's going to tell you about how to vet the team, the things you need to know, the questions you need to ask, the red flags, what you need to look for. Then it'll go into how to evaluate the market to see if this is even the right market, if the things that your team has promised you can actually be done. So it'll go through all of that. And then the last thing it does is helps you to set up your criteria, to understand underwriting to an extent. You're not going to understand everything about it because you don't need to, but the things that you need to know, those top five numbers that you need to make your criteria and how you gauge that, it goes through all of that. So it's going to walk you from beginning to end because you don't need to be going into a syndication looking at numbers when you haven't looked at anything else. So the goal is to mitigate that risk and the chance of loss.
Okay. Okay. And let's see if I understand this correctly. The main difference between a REIT and a syndication is that if I put money into a syndication, I literally own a portion of the property that the syndication is buying, as opposed to a REIT where the company has this portfolio of properties and I own a share in that company.
Yeah, you own a percentage of this company because what the syndication does is forms an LLC. So you are now part of this LLC.
Okay.
So
All
you are a
right.
part owner. Now you can't
Okay.
come and get your five apartment. You can't come do that because you're truly a passive investor. They'll
Okay.
give you updates, but you're not like, oh, I think we should do no, no,
Okay.
you're not doing none
All
of
right. All
that.
right. So, something like a REIT might be the way someone like me could invest in real estate because I don't want a finger involved, let alone
Right.
hands on. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Um,
So
like
with the syndication, you are passive. You're not. I mean, after you figure out if this is what you want to invest in, you're pretty much you once you give your money, you just get updates. You may get them quarterly, you may get them twice a year. After I invest, okay, well, this is what's going on. Okay, thank you. You let me know when I'm getting my money. Okay, that's great. So that's pretty much how that goes with that syndication.
Okay. All right. Well, there are links in the description to Charisma has a class called Understanding and Evaluating Syndications for New Investors. Uh, you have a real estate masterclass, Finding and Vetting a Tenant the Right Way. Yes?
Yes, that's a 1.5 hour class.
Okay.
And then there's the boot camp where you're finding your first property and how to do that, how to
Okay,
prepare the
that's a
market. So,
4 week class,
yes,
correct? Okay.
yes.
All right. Links to all of those are in the description. Thank you, Charisma, for coming and sharing your experiences as a real estate investor. I will be interested to hear if you are going to make that transition into international real estate investor. Thank you so much. For the folks who are watching, are you subscribed to the channel? Do you have notifications turned on? Did you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Something that helps, other people find this content the same way you did. Um, oh, I got to put this up here. Thank you for sharing, Charisma.
You're
Delia's a great
welcome.
host.
She
Kind words about me on the internet. I had to post that. Okay. All right. So thank y'all so much. Be sure to check out Charisma's YouTube channel. I tag you in this? Because I was going to say you can click on the tag. I did not tag you in this. So I will do that. Uh, you can check out her YouTube channel where she talks about all of this kind of stuff, all the things that she does. All right. All right.
thank
I knew it
you.
wasn't going to last long. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.